Welcome back, friends, welcome back. We're on the Newry Road, Crossmaglen, invited by the Ulster History Circle, a blue plaque unveiling. I'll tell you more about it now in a few moments.
Good evening. Good evening. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris Spar, I'm the chairman of the Ulster History Circle. And on behalf of the Circle, I'd like to welcome you all to today's unveiling for what is our 255th blue plaque. But first, I'd like to ask my colleague on the Circle, Dr. Evelyn McAirda, to continue the introduction of Gaelic. Thank you.
Halú Harorinta acquainted in you, Iganocket Shaw Grushbeglenan. The Zagreb Jonaki Kirkle Stara Olu. A current plaque in a kidneyhang, the plaque in a gorma Maris Far Olashorhu. In Arja, in action of Pibli, a givney dini a curla star a huiga, gahachu, nashated, not a gahither nash. Yelar lehaj atchabi ella nearan. Be magic brach, the heart of a garabriach Jonach, march be magic brach, takiach, the owner hooter shatula, agriach the, it was grona, agus ogini einer, lish the placana a winu. But while lish in Kirkle, our mwea has a goal the forest na Gaelica. As an winu arigadish a hugshid, agus boilen ar mwea has a goal the common star a Creggan, as an codju a hugshid doing ag agri na hockage a shaw. Is more in Chonaher a the ag seher chan I Hannon, ag gave new Gaelic Erjana, agus a gave new and store sever orang at the B a kjol sa Banter Show, agus a ta a kjol gafoil. Tan tradition beyond Shaw. A wee has lish na scholarly agus na munchery, a huggin tradition hig na dinioga, agus a wee has lish na dinioga, a cleachdian agus a chydnian and tradition sa la tanuon, agus Janet Chichin go broadu bin. Kimshin na naskin a Shaw at her namahui heart, agus a la tanuon. Kimshin shin and over a Yana Virginia, a Gurkle star a Creggan over. Agus this morning ben Shaw, the seher carrying the Hannon, Marabi, agus Marata, and Heluru in you. For my
The Ulster History Circle puts up our plaques across the 9 counties of Ulster to celebrate the achievements of those men and women who've contributed significantly to our history, locally, nationally and internationally. We're an entirely voluntary body and rely on the support of local authorities, individuals, organisations and businesses to fund our plaques. There's no such similar body doing what we do anywhere throughout this whole island of Ireland. John Hannon's scholarly and dedicated work over 100 years ago to preserve the remnants of Gaelic oral tradition of southeast Ulster has gifted future generations of students a word hoard galore. The Ulster History Circle is delighted to commemorate this renowned scholar and inspired collector of spoken Irish with a blue plaque near the house where he lived in Crossmaglen. The Circle would like to thank Forest na Gaeilge for their financial support towards the plaque and the Creggan Local History Society for their valued assistance. So now I'd like to invite Sean O'Kane, the Chief Executive of Forest na Gaeilge, to speak to us. Sean.
Chris, agus Evelyn, agus talúhar arim pen of a lahar and cha from known and you. Agus scafty wad news more lahar na hilma veo. Sean Dara plaque will oriat janta ag Forest na Gaeilge ahi go farchi at the common the Kirkle Stara Olu. I'm delighted to be here this evening and to have such a big crowd here as well, which is lovely. This is the second plaque that Forest na Gaeilge has sponsored with the Ulster History Circle. I guess it's co-farchi at that power that should doing. Now very suggest doing. So you arge of football a Harringer, Irish Hyber, the Gaeilge, for the Cuige. It's a particularly important partnership for us, our partnership with the Ulster History Circle, because it allows us to draw attention to the very rich Irish language heritage that we have throughout the province of Ulster. Agus know hit a spéisiúr lei thugam héin in sa ceannarithe seo. Nus has sa cantar seo mé agus tá rinne in na nua country Gaelic in sa cantar seo aró John Hannon go tóca sin le mar country dúhis Gaeltachta in San Armagh Hard. I'm particularly delighted to be here with this one because I'm from the area. I'm one of the new Irish language speakers where John Hannon was so taken with the last native Irish speakers of this Gaeltacht area. So just boil a couple of faculty we hash or a couple of days of which I could listen Chanskadal Ari Hashaw at a Galan issue be Ficha Rip van dem COVID. Boil and we has a later noia a hort the Crispar Augusta Hashte Agus Gahariha do Maud Hamel Arinan Chegrahan Lake Le Forest Gaelica Agus Anoia Leshanoka Chow Raftal and Chow Tronona. I want to say a couple of words of thanks to Chris Spur, the chair of the Ulster History Circle, and to his committee, and of course to their very able secretary, Maud Hamill, who made all the arrangements with Forest Gaelica and of course was involved in the organisation of this event here this afternoon. Boilem Fakala Lake Wihash, a horch the Koyaki the Mohaj, Gareth Strimble and Shaw. What is the Gaelic? Ach in a Kyle mar Starry agus mar Hanyoli Eirat Gaelic Anyaya agus Eirat Gaelic and Cantor Show. I want to say a particular word of thanks to Gareth Trimble, a colleague of my own in Forest Gaelic, but particularly in his role as a historian and as an authority, as an expert, an authority on the Irish language heritage of the fuse on this area in particular. It's garage Kate Wall on Chanskanu Shaw, Kate Wall on Plaque Shaw, the Sean O'Hannon in Cantor Shaw. I guess I'm a John we have to go switch agus go Jarn and Chagwell le Kirkle Starroll. Garage is the person who came up with this idea initially for a blue plaque in honour of John Hannon in this area, so we're indebted to Garage for that. So Gramila Maigaf Lake.
It's always great when the Ulster History Circle is contacted by someone who's an avowed champion of a particular person they consider we might commemorate. A few years ago, Gareth Trimble proposed John Hannon for a circle plaque. It's very much thanks to Gareth that we're here today. He has been the mainstay towards delivering this plaque, and our sincere thanks to him. We'll hear more later from him soon in the square, where there will be further tributes to John Hannon. But before the unveiling, here's Dr. Gareth Trimble to say a few words about the person commemorating today. Please.
Thank you, Chris, and I'm delighted to see everyone coming out here. This, I know Sean and Evelyn and Chris have given kind words to myself, but this is really a communal effort, and particularly I'd like to thank the chair of the Creggan Local History Society, because it's under the auspice of the Creggan Local History Society that we're commemorating this man. John Hannon, he was like any one of us that lived in the town. He lived across the road here in this shop. He heard people speaking in a language that was different from English, and he couldn't understand. And he started to realise over 120 years ago that these people were speaking Irish. He found out that these people were native speakers. They were part of a continual link of native speaking in this part of the country. And this was a huge revelation, particularly during the Gaelic revival, that we actually realised that Irish language continued to be spoken outside of the west of Ireland. So this area, and when I speak about this area, I speak about Oriel, from Cooley to Crossmaglen to Farney to North Loud. This wide area had generations of people speaking Irish, and John seen this. So he went to write down what he could, but he couldn't read or write in Irish. So he devised his own system to write this down phonetically. So the collection that he has given us, and it's vast, it's even more special because he's managed to preserve special characteristics of the dialect of this area of Irish. The before we lost it. So this man, he has given us a unique time capsule, not just for linguistic history, but for the history of our people, because preserved in this paper we have details of place names, people, stories, lore, songs, and some of which you'll hear up here that can't be found in manuscripts. So this is a man that very much captured the last part of that unique oral tradition that survived here, and many of the people here today, your ancestors probably would have survived in here. So this is a big moment, not for any one particular person, but for the community, because he was part of this community. He lived, he worked, and he was part of that community. And this is one of the reasons why hopefully we're going to be celebrating his memory with some of his work being produced in song. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Now, our Ulster History Circle plaques don't just happen overnight. A lot of careful planning over many months and sometimes years goes into each unveiling event. My colleague on the circle, Brian McKeown, has put in a tremendous amount of work and effort here in South Armagh towards today's event. Thank you very much to him. We must also thank Kieran McConville and the Creggan Local History Society for their support and for generously providing the refreshments at Mark Kearney's after the event. To Bernard and Thomas Cassidy of Mark Kearney's for allowing the plaque to John Hannon on their premises, and to all the others who helped us here today. This is the fourth time we've had the honour to welcome the Archbishop of Armagh to one of our Ulster History Circle plaque unveilings. The most recent event that Archbishop Eamon Martin participated in took place just over a month ago in his home city of Derry. And we're delighted that the Archbishop is here with us again to join in our commemoration of this scholar and collector of the Irish language and song, John Hannon. Archbishop, might I ask you to say a few words, please?
First of all, great to be with you today, especially to honour and keep in our memory such a tremendous contributor to the Irish language, culture and tradition. And I'm very conscious that John Hannon, like many others in this area, did so even though he was an outsider. He came here, I believe, from Leitrim, but he very much integrated himself into the community here and was a listener, and he picked up so much of the local tradition and folklore and verse, and was able to record it for posterity. And I'm very conscious of many others, the Cantuary, Duhish, Gaelic and Banter Show, Gulier Clean Firianish, is Tawati, Oberchan, Dawarshin, August is more and Okage Ishaw and you, go Wiltshire, Egg Ahinch and Hawati, is it Ha Irach and Canter Shaw, August Oberchan, Eran Irachin. In other words, to really think of all of the local people like John who contributed over so many years. And I'm thinking, of course, of my own predecessor, the late Cardinal O'Fee, also from these parts, who himself contributed hugely to developing up that great heritage and tradition of this place. And therefore it gives me a great honour today just to ask God's blessing on all of you and on this circle, which will remember John Hannon for the future. So Guillaume Banach J, Arahandinya and Shaw and you, August and Plaque, and Cohargis Lesh, the Ulster History Circle and the Creggan Historical Society, and everyone who has made this possible. God bless you all, and I ask God's blessing on all of us in Anya Manahar, August and Vic, August and Spirit and Eve. Amen.
Thank you, Archbishop Martin, thank you. And now it's time for the plaque unveiling. I'm Chris Spur. I'm the chairman of the Ulster History Circle, and on Neary Street we're delighted to have just unveiled a blue plaque to John Hannon, the renowned scholar and inspired collector of spoken Irish and song. The plaque was funded by Forest na Gaeilge and proposed by the Creggan Local History Society. The Circle extends our thanks to them both. We're now going to hear further tributes to John Hannon and enjoy a performance by the Oriel Traditional Orchestra and Singers. So I'll hand over now to the chair of the Creggan Local History Society, Kieran McConville, who will introduce this next part of the commemoration. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, on behalf of the Creggan Local History Society, we'd like to welcome everyone to this important historic event. Got it right. My notes are told. Anyway, this is the first event of this kind ever held in Crossmaglen. So I'd like to thank everybody who worked so hard to make this event possible. First word of thanks goes to the officers and members of the Ulster History Circle, who in conjunction with our Plaque funder, Forest na Gaeilge. First of all is to say we in society really appreciate the Trojan work done by Society Treasurer Dr. Gareth Trimble, who's been to the forefront of the project from its inception to its conclusion. Few local people have known of John Hannon before Gareth wrote an article in the Creggan Journal in 2015-2016. The title of the article was particularly fitting when it described Hannon as a forgotten Gaelic scholar from Crossmaglen. Thankfully, thanks to today's events, he will be no longer forgotten. This is the third plaque unveiling event which the Society has been honoured to have been involved in, following on from Mark McCooey plaque at Creggan Church in 2014, that at Cardinal John Murphy Farley at Newton Hamilton in 2015. So we have plans for further events of this type in the general South Armagh area, and we will keep you informed as far as we can about them. As soon as we know about depth, there's one very important one coming up next year, but I'm sworn to sign it, so I can't say anything more about it now. But anyway, on behalf of the Society, I'd like to thank one of our distinguished guests, Councillor McGuinness, Deputy Chairperson of Newry Moore and District Councillor, and ask her to address a few words here. Thank you.
G.D. Vicarja. As Deputy Chairperson of Newry Moore and Down District Council, I am delighted to be invited this evening to the unveiling of the Ulster History Circle blue plaque to remember John Hannon. This is a memorable evening for the Creggan Local History Society and for everyone in Crossmaglen. I am delighted to see this permanent memorial to John Hannon. He was a fantastic ambassador for this town and surrounding areas and an inspiration to many. His invaluable contribution in preserving the remnants of the declining Gaelic oral tradition in South East Ulster and his unique collection of material, both published and unpublished, remains one of the most important sources of material for future generations studying Irish tradition and language. It is so important to mark the achievements of local trailblazers such as John and to ensure theirs is a lasting legacy for future generations. John's perseverance and determination to preserve our Gaelic heritage and culture is an example to us all, and this tribute is very well deserved. Gur Mayoga.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'd like to now thank one of our other guests here to say a few words, and I'd like to introduce Cronin O'Dublin. Cronin is Head of Research Collections at University College Cork. Many of you will know Cronin's late father, Dr. Dermot O'Dublin, a native of the Loop, County Derry. Dr. O'Dublin has been the custodian of the main Hannon manuscript collection over the past 50 years. A lecturer in Irish at the University of Ulster at Coleraine and a close friend of our late Cardinal Thomas O'Fee, Dr. Dermot O'Dublin had a deep affiliation with this part of the country. As a leading scholar of the oral poetic tradition, he was instrumental in propagating the study of this region's proud Gaelic poetry and song tradition among generations of students. He taught, as students said, that this commemoration of John Hannon would not be happening without the crucial role which Dermot played in the preservation and study of the Hannon manuscript collection. Thank you.
Geez, what a lovely evening. Thank you very much, Kieran. First of all, on behalf of our family, I would like to thank the Ulster History Circle and the Creggan Historical Society for asking for someone from the family to speak on behalf of my father, Jim O'Divlin. I know it would have been a great honour for him to be here today, and it is a great honour for us that you've thought of him on this very special occasion for the community of Crossmaglen and Unveiling. It's especially poignant for us that as a family, and we are especially touched that you remember and think of him on occasions like this. Daddy would have felt great pride and indeed delight that John Hannon, Sean O'Hannon, has been recognised for his critical contribution to the preservation of the Gaelic traditions of this part of the country. We should not forget that in difficult times, Riala was a sanctuary for the Gaelic tradition, and the language, its literature and song traditions persisted here, and was indeed developed by its poets and scribal community, setting it alongside Dublin and Cork as centres of literary and manuscript activity well into the 19th century. Hannon recognised the importance of the Irish language in this part of the island and set about preserving it, often receiving very little credit for his work. Many of my father's students will recall the metaphor that he frequently cited of Sugan and Duhish, so movingly described by Brenton O'Divlin in the last chapter of his modern epic prose tale, Níl Maidin agus Tinaoiche, which, if you haven't read it, is a sophisticated Game of Thrones written in Irish almost 60 years ago. So O'Divlin describes a scene of an older man winding a rope, the suga, with a young child, essentially teaching the child how to make something useful from material that was to hand, but also, in the act of making the rope, passing on a tradition, the duchas, from one generation to the next. In a very critical way, John Hannon recognised that the Irish language in Riala was under threat and diminishing. He gathered up the strands of this disappearing tradition and preserved it in an extraordinary manuscript record, handing on the Sugan to the next generation. As a librarian, I especially appreciate Hannon's determination and dedication to this task, given the scarcity of resources and supports that he had available at the time. Hannon succeeded in his work. The traditions have come down to us, Uglun Guglun, through the perseverance and determined work of Hannon, of Lorcan O'Murray, of Cardinal Tomás O'Feach, and the community of local historians, researchers, musicians, singers and poets that they encouraged and fostered. Community was and is at the centre of his work. My father would have always said that he was exceptionally lucky, first of all, to have had the opportunity of education at St. Patrick's College, Armagh, but also to have been introduced early in his career to a community of scholars and activists, amongst whom there were some exceptional minds. I am thinking especially, of course, of Cardinal O'Feach, of Father Eamon Devlin, and Dean Sean Quinn. While academically, all of these mentors were brilliant men, they wore their learning lightly. Their people and the traditions of their community were their true passion and love. They were pioneering, brave, determined, and generous with their knowledge and support. They had a deep sense of the importance of community and tradition in the act of learning and of education. And John Hannon was an exemplar for them and their objectives. In the person of John Hannon, we have an embodiment of the exceptional value and foresight that a sense of community learning brings. Preserving the Gaelic traditions of this special place in manuscript, Hannon continues to hand us on the Sugan. So finally, I congratulate the Ulster History Circle for recognising John Hannon and wish the Creggan Historical Society every success in continuing this remarkable work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cronin. The last speaker now, I introduce Dr. Gareth Trimble. Dr. Trimble currently works for Forest na Gaelica, North-South implementation body for the promotion of the Irish language. A native of Crossmaglen, a past student of Dr. Dermot O'Divlin, He was researched the life and works of John Hannon. I'd like to invite him to say a few words on the life and work of John Hannon, who we are gathered here to commemorate this evening. Thank you.
I promise I'll not keep you long. This is going to be the showcase later on, so I'm delighted to be back here on home turf. It's always very special to celebrate your own area, and you know, this is something that we've been doing in the Creggan Local History Society, so it's a great occasion. So obviously we're here to celebrate a local man, John Hannon. He was from Crossmaglen, off Crossmaglen, amongst us, and he's made one important contribution in preserving this rich store of spoken Irish that was once distinctive to this border region, no less than 2 generations ago. So it's hard to believe my own granny would have heard, and even her parents would have spoken Irish, but that link, you know, didn't continue on the way it should. But more remarkably, this young shopkeeper's son, John Hannon, only after coming from where he used to live, work and sleep, he couldn't speak Irish himself, he couldn't read or write. But when he first embarked on this mission, and it was a mission, by 1893, he wanted to try and capture and document the concealed wealth of songs, story and lore that wasn't in English, but in the Irish language of this area. And it was from this last generation of latent Gaelic speakers, native Gaelic speakers to this area, that would be called these stories, songs, etc. for him. In his ingenuity, he created a unique system of hand notation to enable him to phonetically write down these songs and stories, but more importantly, these sounds that he was hearing, because it was all he couldn't understand it. And these native speakers, they were his neighbours, they were his customers, they were coming in and they were reciting stuff to him. He gained their confidence, and he managed to be able to amass this massive store of linguistic wealth that existed here in Crossmaglen among the community just over 100 years ago. His collection of spoken Irish is an invaluable linguistic treasure trove, which was supplied by those very people. It's not just John Hannon, but it's the people that supplied the information to him, I think, that we should be commemorating. Hannon's legacy in itself is one which this broader border community can be immensely proud of. And its detailed phonetic transcripts continues to shed further light into the rich poetic and song tradition that has become synonymous with this region since the 17th century. So in marking the unveiling of the Ulster History Circle's blue plaque, and we're delighted here that Chris and his team from the Ulster History Circle have honoured us, we are going to celebrate the occasion with the Oriel Traditional Orchestra and some of our local singers who have been able to use some of the songs from the Hannon collection, and we're going to get a taste of what these songs sounded like when he heard them. So without further ado, we're going to move on to the main part of the night. First and foremost, I'd like you to welcome the Oriel Traditional Orchestra that has come. All of these musicians they're all highly skilled in their own individual right, but we're delighted that they're coming here to join us. They've been working along with a number of the singers over this past year or two, and you know, particularly with Noreen and Dahi, who are going to be conducting. Noreen and Dahi, as it happens, themselves are All-Ireland champion musicians. So we're delighted, we're really in good company here tonight. So certainly this is going to be a first for Crossmaglen. We have an orchestra in the square of Crossmaglen. I never thought I could say those words ever. You know. So, first and foremost, we're going to begin with our first song called Maya Cake, and the oral traditional orchestra is going to provide accompaniment. This song sort of translates into Crooked-Eyed Mary, and it's a unique version which has come down only through the oral tradition. It didn't come down in some of the older manuscripts that survived. This survived only in the oral tradition, and it's one of those few songs that we wouldn't have only for the transcript that Hannon wrote down. It was written down from some of the members of the McKeown family that lived down by Loch Ross just over 100, maybe 110 years ago. And now I'd love to introduce the singer of this song, Poddergeen Fagrank of Cullyhanna, who herself, as I was, a student of Dermot O'Divlin. But more importantly, Poddergeen studied the songs of the Hannon collection back in 1999 when she was in University of Ulster, and she's also produced a CD of traditional songs in her own right. Poddergeen has been working along with Dahi and the rest of the orchestra over this past while, and I trust you are in for a really brilliant treat.
Maya Cake. So Maya Cake is written about the housekeeper of the parish priest, and it was written by Art McCooey. Unfortunately, we were not aware of any tune that went along with this, so we made an attempt to put a tune to it because it's such a good song that we married it with one of the pipers, Oak Ireland's tune Blind Mary, because it's of the same name, and luckily for us the words fitted the tune, so we thought we'd go with that as a tune so that we can get it back and sing. So here we go, Maya Cake.
Treasure. Okay. Now, the oral traditional orchestra is going to